You really truly enter a conversation without knowing where we're going to land. That really truly is the way to have a conversation, is not to be like, I'm certain the answer is going to be that. And really the conversation is going to be about me convincing you or you being better at convincing me. And then we'll land on one of the two. But to really, truly enter the dialogue with curiosity of like, what if there is a third option that makes everybody fulfilled?
And that's part of, to me, the great power of a genuine conversation. It can change people's lives.
Oh, Abby, I had one of my favorite episodes today. I have had possibly hundreds, thousands of conversations with Katie in our 40, 30 years of friendship. I have never heard her speak about this idea that, are we willing to solve this issue? Like when we enter a conversation that's difficult, to be able to pause and say, are you willing to resolve this? Am I willing to resolve this as an entry point was incredible. How was it for you?
Oh my gosh. The energy was so delightful in this. There was so much back and forth and fireworks between the two of you that I really had so much fun watching and listening. The thing that really struck me with such significance was curiosity and the impact curiosity has on our relationships with each other, with ourselves. I think about like curiosity in relation to compassion and how it's hard to be compassionate when you're also feeling shame. But when you can switch to curiosity, there's just so much more available, so many more creative options. And she even went into, longevity, and this like biohacking tool is actually curiosity. And I thought that was incredibly, incredibly impactful.
Oh, I love it. This is beautiful. So here, people, go listen to this episode. There was a lot of joy. There was a lot of fun. And certainly this wisdom around curiosity, where it really does feel like we can shift any situation, like when it's gridlocked, to go to curiosity. And in this episode, she gives us a few tips on how to do that. So
yeah, let's get into it.
Mm-hmm. Well, hello, Katie.
Hello, Soph.
We got the memo on the stripes today, huh?
I know. I love it. To me, when that occurs, and it sometimes happens with Gay and me too. We'll be, getting ready to go out, and then I'll realize that we're coordinated.
Not on purpose.
We're not on purpose. It's never been on purpose, although we do have, he does say, now I don't want to be a bowling team, like we're both wearing the same. And so we don't.
No, but I like that mine's are kind of horizontal and yours are kind of vertical and your flowers going on. I like the variety and eclecticism of it. It's really cool. So, hey, listen, I was talking to one of my clients and an issue came up that I was like, now I have this thing of like, what would Katie say?
Oh, I love it. Sometimes
now I get to talk to you.
What would Katie say?
If you start doing it with yourself, I think it has a component.
Does it have another meaning?
Yes. Yes, I think so. If you start talking to yourself at the third person, I think it has another meaning. Yes, indeed. So this is what happened. They profoundly disagree. It's a couple, and they profoundly disagree on something pretty fundamental. They love each other. They really want to be with each other, and he really doesn't want her to do something, and she really wants to do it. And I was really curious. So I had my take a little bit on it, but I was really curious to how do you walk people through when they have a pretty fundamental, if you want more details, I would give you more details, but it feels we could maybe go general on this one.
Well, what's first occurring to me is that in partnerships, part of the societal expectation is that you have to compromise.
Mm-hmm.
I've been hearing about this, all of the time that Gay and I have been presenting relationship material. And if you look through any of our materials, you will never see the word compromise. Mm-hmm. Because one of the things that we've looked at is how can each of us have what we really want and stay connected? Mm-hmm. Or make space for each of us to be on more of an individuation, because there's unity, the impulse to experience unity and the impulse to individuate and have your own creative exploration in the world. And so when those things clash, what people get into is the trap that one of us has to give up something.
Okay.
Like we can't both have what we want. And so what I like to ask, coaching clients or people who've asked my advice is, are you willing to create a solution where both of you can have what you most want?
So do you think it's a willingness? I mean, you think you're speaking to it's a willingness.
Well, it's a willingness to resolve the issue. So, and what it generally brings up is for both people, how they deal with differences in making decisions. Because it could be about a whole bunch of things. It could be about, do we want children, or do we want to have, someone come in and cook for us, or do we want to have each of us cook what we want, because I don't like what you eat and you don't like what I eat, or so it can be in any area of life.
So in the case of, that's an interesting one that you went to the children. It's not exactly that, but it is of that amplitude. It's that size of a decision. So say one wants a child and the other doesn't. The third option would be, half a child? That's right. Or a child every other week?
I'll take care of the kid during the week and you on the weekend. So,
but we stick together. So when it is such a thing that it's like the decision involves that if one gets what they want, kind of the other doesn't, sometimes it's a little bit in that framework.
Well,
or is it?
So then the next layer is, so if people are willing to resolve it, because sometimes they're not. That sometimes it's like, this is really what I want. I'm not willing to look at any other point of view.
Okay.
And then that would be what I would call a deal breaker. So.
So the willingness to resolve it.
Yeah.
Could generate a creative solution, which is not have the child or not have the child. It could even be something else entirely.
It could be something else entirely. And what often comes up once we have the willingness, and even if we don't have the willingness, what's often under that is some old unresolved issue in one or both, it's usually both partners' lives that's impacting that decision. So something that happened earlier in their life, it could have to do, so like if it's with kids, it could have to do with being the middle lost child or being the ending child that everybody forgot and always had to say, here I am too. And so then those issues need to be looked at, and what needs to be done to resolve that, to open up to, what's the issue there, or the developmental possibility. Like, for example, I can notice what I want and say what I want, and I can actually have what I want, which a lot of people have learned how to compromise that. So then we'd give some attention to what is the wound or the unexpressed creative possibility that you're bringing into the relationship.
It's really beautiful, because in some cases, someone may not want a child at all as a choice, like they just don't like that lifestyle, or they're just not interested in raising another human. But in some cases, it could be, I'm afraid I'm going to be a horrible parent because my parent was so whatever. So if it is, then to kind of invite the exploration of like, what is really behind this yes or this no or this strong.
Whenever it's really strong, and particularly if it's defensive, if people get defensive, like I couldn't possibly, or they get snarky or sulky or attacking the other. It's almost always something that's unresolved in their own relationship life.
And do you think some people avoid, like, let's stay with the children, because I think it is an easy yes or no type thing. Do you think, so I hear the willingness, and I hear the willingness to even explore your own pain. So let's say you do land on, I really don't want one, even if I resolve my thing. Then do you think people are afraid that the next step would be, then it is a deal breaker? Like, do you think people are avoiding the deal breaking?
I think sometimes people do avoid the deal breaking, and then they do make a compromise, which doesn't really speak to their core values, to what they really want in their lives. And then they create a mess for themselves, because then they're, they're making a decision that they didn't really want to make. And like with kids, that's a decision that's the rest of
Affecting
your
them.
life kind of
And also
decision.
it's affecting them. Like
And
if,
yes,
if
and
one
it's
of the parent was dragged into doing it when they really didn't want to, there's
Right.
going to be...
Or
it's gonna
they,
be felt.
well, see, when they were dragged into it means that they took the victim position.
Yes.
And then the other person had to either be the hero or the villain.
Yeah.
And so in any case, everybody loses in that kind of situation, either right away or further on and through the next generations because of that kind of a decision. And that's often when I'm working with a family or, with partners who have an issue with their kid, that comes into play, the whole idea of, and for people to really know, what does it really mean for me that no, I don't want kids? And to be able to talk about that with the other person in a way that allows everybody to share what's really true for them and to, the feelings that go with that and the memories and the projections on the other person. It's really a big deal and is usually best dealt with an advocate, a coach, someone that both people like and admire who can help guide them to how can we move forward in a way that honors the both of us.
I love that. How can we move forward in a way that honors both of us? It reminds me, years ago, I was in a therapy session with a therapist I really respect, and he mentioned that I was not very gifted at conversations, actual conversations. And I remember being really shocked because I mean, it was many, 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 many years ago. So I wasn't as certain that I was really good at it as I am now, but I certainly thought I was. Well, he made this distinction that I was very weak. It was difficult. Like I realized maybe I never had a conversation before then, which was that you really truly enter a conversation without knowing where we're going to land. That really truly is the way to have a conversation is not to be like, I'm certain the answer is going to be that. And really the conversation is going to be about me convincing you or you being better at convincing me. And then we'll land on one of the two. But to really, truly enter the dialogue with curiosity of like, what if there is a third option that makes everybody fulfilled?
Right. And or a third or a fourth or a fifth, because we forget that we have so many creative options and so much of life occurs for people as either ors. We could do this or we could do that, and that's it. And so we've narrowed our creative possibilities, I think, as a society in general. And if I get attached or defensive, it cuts off my creative thinking. But what I'm also hearing is the courage to step into the unknown. Because a genuine conversation, I'm going to be affected. I'm going to be touched and moved, and I might be challenged, and I might have stuff come up that is unexpected to me, and that's part of, to me, the great power of a genuine conversation. It can change people's lives, if you're willing to step into the unknown. But it does take that step of courage.
It's interesting that you say that because as soon later, as recently as this conversation, we started, and we often start these calls, you and me, with like, do we have a topic or do we not? And I said, I have a topic, and do you want to know? And you were like, no, I don't want to know. I want you to take us in a conversation that I don't know what it is, so that you could be like, it's almost like you were excited that you were going to surprise yourself.
Yes, and I love that, because to me it attaches to what's called openness to learning. Or Carol Dweck would call it it's a what is that? It's a creative mindset. It's a growth mindset is the best indicator of having a really full, rich, successful life. But all of us have these places of rigidity where I'm just not going to move, and I don't like that, and you can't make me. And those are often really, really young. The way that we either had our wishes respected or not.
Or not.
When we were little, of, here's what I want. Oh, no, you don't. Or, oh, I really want to go to no, we can't do that. Or, here's what I want for dinner. Oh, no, we just get no.
That's
That's
not
not
what we're
good for
doing.
you, or what, or you're not really hungry, or you don't really want that. And so I think it interferes with our wanting muscles. And that very few people really have their wanting muscles really fully developed, like how to know what is it I'm really interested in, what do I want, and then can offer that into the conversation. But almost always to me, it's about where am I not willing to have you influence me or to touch me in a way that I'm going to be affected.
Wow, that is so fascinating because I was with people this weekend. I thought of you with that party you had done years ago where you had written on the wall, leave the small talk at the door because you really don't like small talk, nor do I. And I spent time this weekend with people that were like, we decided to call them even tiny talks or micro talks, like even less than small talk. Literally, like how many hours can people talk about nothing at all? I mean, it was just a complete fascination. I remember at one of the meals, I was like, oh, if I was gay right now, I would leave, as in our gay Hendrix. I would just literally walk out of this conversation because it was so uninteresting. It was really
and he would. And one of the things I love about Gay and admire is that he'll stop that. Like,
Yes.
I'm not interested in this, or, here's what I'd like to, or what's really going on here, or he'll leave.
Yeah. So what was interesting in this particular conversations I was having, well, non-conversations really, I was having this weekend, is that I guess how do I go about this? Like they related in a way that it would have been, I made the decision to stay. Let's just say that the stakes, if I had left, were a little, it would have been unkind to someone I really care about.
Yes,
it's true.
Yeah.
But,
So you decided to do this, and it kind of tweaked you a little bit, and I can even see it made you itchy.
It tweaked me. And I'll tell you, it was like the only thing I could do was to try to have a conversation in my head. Like I disconnected. That was my only way. Like I cannot talk about weather in an uninteresting way for so long. Hours and hours I'm talking. So what I did was, funny that you noticed that I was tweaking, like my entire body just got. Well, so let's talk about that for a second. Why is small talk? Because I think that's an interesting thing too. Like, why do you think small talk is to some people so comfortable and to some people so incredibly repellent? Like, because I don't know people in between so much. Like either those do it or don't, right? Like, what is that?
That's a really good question. Well, the first thing that comes to me is that small talk reinforces our personas, the roles that we've learned to get along, to have some sort of power and attention, and to avoid getting into trouble. And so most people's small talk is surface. It's skating on the surface. And there are certain conversations, weather being probably the primary one that's considered a skating conversation that you can just talk about the weather here and the weather here. And last year when we were here, the weather was, and then off you go on to, around the world on a weather balloon. And because what people are doing is basically withholding their authenticity. And since human beings are meant to express, and you're holding that back, that you were saying I disconnected, it makes perfect sense, because when you're not expressing, you're using measurable physical energy to withhold. And that withholding makes you distant from the others, and then the others look different. So, but when you drop into big talk, which is authenticity, what I'm really experiencing, what I'm curious about, what I notice in you, what I'm curious about what's going on in the world, how it affects me. When you drop into, you're speaking from essence, from your core, rather than from your persona. And for many people, that makes them very scared.
Why?
Well, because you can't predict it. So
you can't control it.
You can't control it either for yourself, and you might have feelings. Feelings might arise, like you might get angry, or you might feel sad, you might want to cry, or you might feel really, really excited. You might have sexual feelings that you don't want anybody to know about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is interesting that you're saying that one particularly, because I do think that that environment has a good amount of sexual repression going on, and I wonder if it was related, that there was almost kind of a, it's a habit. It feels like a habit to me. Like this is how we operate, and that
It's a social habit.
it's a social habit. Yeah, and so people that are interested. So maybe we are used to having conversations that are more deep. Like, is that what it is? Like, I'm just more. I mean, I could talk to you about sex, money, food. I mean, there's no topic that I wouldn't anywhere on a pod. Like sometimes when I go on podcasts, people are like, do you mind if we bring up that? And I'm like, I don't even want to know what the end of that sentence is. Like, if you ask me anything, I mean, and if I decide not to answer, that will be on me. But
Exactly. That openness to me is so, well, first of all, the first thing that came to me is it's so sexy. And and sexiness and aliveness come out of the same faucet. It's our aliveness. It's like the stream of aliveness that you get to enjoy. And when you're authentic and open, you get to discover. I mean, for me, that's the big joy, as I get to discover while we're talking to each other. And I love that. I get to discover new connections and more about you and more about how people resolve different kinds of issues. And to me, that's just a big fun. So much more. If I'm in a conversation where we're talking about, what we're expecting for the weather, I mean, pretty soon I start getting sleepy.
like a little
Yeah, exactly. Drooping and just, yes, falling over.
Ah, wow. Do you think it starts also, like, I love when Gay talks about this, like the wonder breath, like, do you think it starts from this curiosity that we are interested
Yes.
in one another, in ourselves, maybe even like.
Well, I think that curiosity is one of the things that gets squished out of people as they grow up. I can remember being in the first grade, and I was so excited, because I was learning stuff, and I came home and we were at the dinner table, and I started to share about something that I had learned, and my mother said, "Well, aren't you a little know-it-all?"
Oh no! Oh
yes! Oh yes! So you can just imagine, my
just like literally like a little squishy.
And I basically decided. Even then, that I wasn't going to talk about anything deep with my mother. And I didn't, like, ever. And this is when I was 6 years old. So,
wow.
So I think that we can, each of us, recover our curiosity, though.
How do we do that?
Well,
she says in a curious way.
Well, one thing that I love to do is and you may have heard this from me, is I create a little kids, when they're working on something or wondering something, they're going, the is a way that we generate curiosity and we move into our creative brain. So when you're in small talk, you're in your critical brain. Am I doing it right? Do other people like me? And when you literally move into your wonder brain.
Oh.
So I use both to generate curiosity, but also to sustain it. So if I'm in the middle of a conversation and we kind of get into a little impasse, I'll go, and it's just to open up my curiosity again, which I can do also with moving and breathing, opening my, moving in some new way, just opening up any kind of patterned moving that I'm doing, and breathing more openly. Because when I get scared, I'm not breathing. And so if I'm doing small talk, it's really coming from fear.
That's what I was hearing in what you were saying. Like, because the movements you're making are the ones I know to do when I'm afraid.
Yeah.
So we're saying that small talk is coming from, you said it earlier too, it's like we're protecting ourselves from the unknown.
Yes.
But small talk, if I talk about the weather, I pretty much know what I'm saying. Like,
right. And you know what the other people are going to say, and you also know how they're going to respond. And it's a way of connecting, but you're not really getting the nourishment.
Right.
Yeah. So it's as if you're trying to get, water out of, I have my water bottle here, and I'm trying to get water, and there's nothing there. But if I just sip a little bit, I'm not really going to ever get refreshed, but I'm not going to die. But it's not going to really be, oh man, I just had this fabulous conversation where, I opened up to a whole new possibility, of, being in my day-to-day or resolving this issue or just feeling more aliveness as I'm going through the day.
It's very good. We did start this conversation. You felt very lively to begin with. I think that just energetically, and then the way you're dressed with this giant flower on your jacket. If you guys are not seeing this video on YouTube, you go.
Also, elbows.
She has bright burgundy pink elbows. I mean, the whole thing is just absolutely magical. But as we talking, which this conversation feels very authentic. Like we did start with, I didn't know where we were going. You didn't know where we were going. But we were kind of on together on a journey of like, let's explore this. And both of us, I can feel on our skin, on our energy, it's like we're both like more and more alive and more
Exactly.
connected as well.
And that's the main thing, because we focus on content, like I got to get this problem solved.
Yeah.
But what's underneath that is, am I opening up the flow of aliveness, which enables me to solve problems, to be open to the unknown? And so if I give attention to that first, then it feeds my brain to be able to come up with much more exciting possibilities and solutions.
I love that. So if we go back to the couple I was working with this weekend, I'm curious because you said a few things that were, I don't know how exactly we jumped from the two topics, but it doesn't matter. I don't need to know. The thing that I love too about the couples that you were saying is like, are we both willing, which feels like it fits in the second, like, am I willing to be curious when I'm in small talk, if I ever find myself there, which I really don't very often, but let's just say if I did, or if I am with someone who is, I can express even more curiosity. Like I can really kind of come up with like more ways that I'm like this famous thing of like, how do you be interesting is often when you're interested.
Exactly.
You just kind of go after. And I wasn't this weekend. I was a bit in my judgmental brain of like, wow, this is small talk. Well, isn't it small talk? Like I was kind of stuck in my own loop of, kind of, was I not right that these people are so small talky, right? So maybe I don't do small talk, but I do judgment. And so, which is the same.
Yes, it is the same. So the word that was floating through my mind as you were speaking is appreciation. So what adds to curiosity is if I'm genuinely giving my sensitive awareness to you and to my responses to what you're saying and to what's flowing. And it's a but it's a in the conversation, like, what am I experiencing here? What's coming up for me? And if I'm willing to just let that pop out, even though I may not know where it's going, it leads us down a new path.
Yeah.
Because we often think I need to know the solution before I've even gotten willing to know the solution.
Exactly, which is really not as interesting of a solution than if you enter with the curiosity and then you enrich me and I feed you something and then you throw it back at me and then together we have more juice. We just
you can come up with something that's entirely different than the either or.
Yes. It's funny when my child was younger, she didn't want to take a bath. And I remember there was a time where it was kind of like, this is now time to take a bath. And I remember saying something along the lines of, and I was really watching coercion at the time. I was really big on like, not do I give you this if you do, like this thing that people do with children. But I did say something along the lines of like, would you prefer to take your bath before or after dinner? And I remember, and she was just like, oh, after would be great. And she was just joyfully went to the bathtub.
Right.
But what I remember thinking was, this was just a creative question. Like that's all it was. I kind of went to, instead of being locked into it should be this way or it should happen or it has
a power struggle. So
a power struggle, which you would have won because I could have forced her into the tub, but it's like, what is the joy in that? When after dinner we ended up going and it was just like this, she had chosen to go and it was just this really lovely thing. And so maybe in closing, we could think like an ode to creativity, which I know both you and Gay are so excited about and interested in inspiring in people. It sounds to me like a lot of what we said today was very much like, open yourself up to be more creative and to kind of look for other ways.
Yes. And I think of it as ongoing improvisation. So, I mean, literally we're improvising or we're working with a script that somebody else wrote.
Yes.
And some of those are good, like, don't walk in the street wwithout looking both ways.
That's a good script.
Those scripts are really, really good. But beyond, learning how to keep yourself safe, in a very physical way, we can really improvise, so many aspects of our lives that we look to other models for and do things the way they used to be done. But we could,
Why? We can totally invent a new way.
all kinds of new ways.
Literally,
I remember, I don't know why this is jumping into my mind, but I remember from years ago that we, Gay and I, would switch sides of the bed just regularly.
just because.
Just because,
Uh-huh.
because we don't have our side of the bed. And so, well,
Yep.
let's just mess that up and we'll start it. So
Yep.
the things that we could sort of have internal rules about, or well, this is the way we do it,
Yeah.
doesn't really have to be the way that we do things. But what that means is that I'm really taking responsibility for what I'm choosing and, what I'm creating in my life, rather than not doing that and then being able to blame others.
I love that. It's funny. One last thing. Well, my last thing. You can somewhere else, of course. But there's a lot of people lately that are big on longevity and biohacking and doing all these things. But it sounds to me like, and they're taking all sorts of outside
Substances.
medications and things and whatever. But which I'm not judging. But I'm curious to what you're saying. It feels to me like that would be a really nice antidote to aging, is to just keep having this curiosity and this mind of genuine wonder. Then
That's a wonderful thing that you're saying, because both of us are. I'm about to become 76, and Gay is about to become 80. Which, just is like, wow, we're old.
Well, the number is a little bit bigger.
Yes, exactly. But, that's what people would say. And we could have a small talk conversation about that. But the deeper conversation is that I feel more alive and more of a flow of vitality and well-being and discovery than ever. And I think we can keep that going lifelong. And it really, I think it also youthens people. This is my hypothesis.
Yes.
And if you look at pictures of me 20 years ago, we can't
You look
use
older.
I do. I look older than I do now, which is like
100%. Energetically, physically, 100%. And I would say that's true for me too. I mean, I'm not exactly 60, but I'm not far from 60. And I feel younger than when I was in my 40s by a lot. So, hey, people, you heard it here. Just keep being wondering and curious and having fun and having dear friends like my dear Katie is my friend. That is what's going to keep you young and beautiful. Well, Houston.
thank you.